Hello everybody, it is me, Tarsal, and today guys, welcome back to another Decor tips and tricks. I know I said that I'd get this out probably by like March, it's April, close enough for me. I don't really have a schedule, but this one took a lot longer than usual. Because as you can see, oops, that's not the right button. There is a lot more to cover in this episode. This thing is almost 4 times as long as the kitchen one, which so far has been the longest and most tips in it. So we got a lot to cover today, so we're just going to get straight on into these outdoor themed build tips and tricks. So guys, starting out down at this end, a lot of these can be pretty situational and can be really only good for decorating like certain kind of areas or certain themed builds, such as pumpkins and things. But down that end, we have more things such as trees, how to make bushes and just general environment areas look better. So if you're looking for more of that, skip ahead a little bit in the video. I'll put like a timestamp on the screen. So starting up with some kind of farm themed or more Halloween themed builds. So this can kind of be used for Halloween with the jack-o'-lanterns or the carved pumpkins. But if you put sea pickles on top of both melons and pumpkins, it can kind of make it look like a little bit of a stem protruding out of these blocks, give it a little bit more depth than just having them flat. Because it looks a little bit plain after a while. Minecraft always just tends to look the same, it's just a square block. So every now and then just adding these things can just help break it up a little bit and add some color to these orange pumpkins. Going along with the Halloween theme, I'm pretty sure everybody knows this by now, but if you put redstone and like skulls on the ground, it makes it look like blood. This is super simple. Hopefully you knew this. If not, a lot of this stuff later on is going to be a bit of a surprise to you. Moving on very quick to probably one of my favorite blocks in the game building-wise. There's so many possibilities with it, and that is the campfire. As you notice here, I actually have the chimney blocked off with some trapdoors, and then a campfire right at the top, because this actually gives off a smoke trail. And so this is very good for making villages come to life, because in Minecraft, nothing moves, really, besides animals. So if you have a village, can look pretty dead if nothing's moving, right? The only really things you got moving could be like water particles in like a lake or something, right? There's nothing else that's moving, you know? Grass isn't swaying, trees aren't moving around, things like that, right? So adding some moving particles to your builds can really help break it up. So adding this here with a chimney, you can have any really type of chimney and then just at the top surround it by some trapdoors. I prefer spruce because they're solid trapdoors. Dark oak works too, but using things like the acacia trapdoors might lead into problems just because you can see the fire in the top. Moving on here is something for a campsite or just generally outdoors at all. Here we have 2 sleeping bag designs. I prefer this one here. This one uses snow and 2 carpets to make it look like a pillow and just kind of like a little flat bag area on the ground, like a little sheet or something. This one here, alternatively, can just use a white carpet. I prefer this one just because there is a little bit more depth because the snow layer is 2 pixels tall instead of just the 1 pixel tall for the white carpet. Making paths for around your base too can also really help set the theme for your base. If you have a dirt path like this, you might get more of a medieval vibe, where if you go for more of a cobblestone kind of sidewalk path with a little bit of curves beside it, you might get more of a modern vibe, especially with the bushes and rows of flowers planted perfectly beside it. Putting stone buttons on your path is huge as well. These can look like little pebbles. There is also another technique as well that I'm going to show you way later on down in the ending room there, but it's only available in creative and you need access to commands, so that's why I kind of put it on later in the video because most of you are probably going to be watching this for survival tips. A big thing about making paths and just generally anything in Minecraft is block combinations. Set a palette for yourself. So if you want to make a stone themed build, try to use anything that's really gray and you can tile together and just kind of mess up into this big cluster and still look good. Here I'm using cobblestone, dead tube coral, normal stone, and gravel. You can see the blocks here. I just don't have normal stone here, but also basalt works really well for paths too, as it looks pretty similar to cobblestone, except it's a little bit darker, so it can give more of a sinister vibe if you want maybe a nether base, if you want to also have a cobblestone looking path in it, but you don't like how light the cobblestone is, you can use basalt as a good alternative instead. It is a little bit tricky to place as you saw there because it does have the rotations, so keep that in mind. The grass paths that they added quite a while back now are also a really great alternative. If you want them to be straight, like a solid grass path, that's good too. Or you can mix them up like this, add in a little bit of stones for a much rougher looking path. Another alternative to using the grass paths that used to be used a lot more is coarse dirt. It doesn't look as good because, again, it's not worn down that one block, which doesn't give it quite as much depth and just generally feeling of being a worn down path as this. You've probably heard it behind me here, but this is a fountain. And fountains are really good as centerpieces. I didn't actually make one over there just because I made the path a little bit too narrow, and making any type of good looking fountain would be a little bit of a challenge in the space that I gave myself. But fountains are really good for modern builds. They can be good for castles as well. When you make it, try to make it 2 layers, so that way whenever the water flows down, it kind of flows down one area and then flows out a little bit more. Or alternatively, you can make it flow out and then in towards the center. That's also an option. When making a fountain, also try to put some type of centerpiece at the top of it, or maybe some type of statue if you want to make like some type of bird, maybe an eagle with like its wings spread out. Anything really goes. This one here isn't the greatest fountain I've ever made. I'm also going to flash another type of fountain that I made in one of my projects, which the next video is going to be of, probably. And it's actually using stained glass. And it's a very interesting way of making a fountain because you can really make it look like the water's being sprayed out of the fountain rather than just shuttled up to the top and then poured out. So there's 2 kind of ways of doing it. Both work respectively in their own areas. I would prefer water fountains personally, but in certain circumstances, stained glass is just the way to go. So guys, when you place a bell in your Minecraft world, please, please, please don't just do this. It looks terrible, right? It's just a bell sitting on the ground. You can do it on the wall, which looks a little bit better. But if you put it on a stand of just some standard stone, it actually looks really good because the stone texture follows through onto the bell block. You can also add some little stone buttons here just for a little bit of depth to the sides. And just generally giving it more of a stand and more of an actual like presence there, rather than just the bell sitting on the ground in like the corner of your base or something. It just helps to break it up a little bit. When making mines, minecart tracks, mine shafts, anything like that, you can always make broken minecart rails by turning them, rather than just doing this, placing one beside it, and then breaking it. And unlike things like redstone, it'll actually keep that shape. So you can make it look like the minecart track has been twisted up and like blown apart, really, right? And so the minecart will actually derail off the tracks. Sticking with the theme of trains, here we have 3, or if you mix them up, possibly like 4 or 5 train track designs. Using extinguished campfires in this first one is huge because it actually adds the layers of logs kind of going down the tracks. Sometimes train tracks also have them, yeah, like this, where they go across the train tracks and then the rails go across it. Sadly, you can't really do that in Minecraft, and this here just tends to look the best. These little logs can kind of give that vibe as well, so that does work. Below the train tracks, adding basalt makes it look like the ballast underneath the train tracks, so it's the kind of whitish gray rocks running along them, so that can also work too, to kind of break it up from just grass. The next design would be using spruce staircases, or really any wooden staircase, in kind of any pattern you'd like here, so you can use them above the train tracks and have the minecart go down the middle. You could do them on the side of the train tracks, have it go down the middle, or you could even put it on the other direction like this, and have it almost like a bump up to the train tracks. Either way, using staircases in multiple different areas has been used quite a while now. You can also use smooth stone slabs as kind of like the pickets that are going through. I don't really know what to call them, like the joists that go kind of across the train track. You can use these on either side, and it makes it look like those also. Now here are a couple farmland designs. So this is a Scarecrow design that works actually really well. This is using a fence post, a hay bale, 2 fence posts on the side of that, an observer on top of the hay bale with the face facing forward from the Scarecrow. Got a piece of brown wool, or really any color you want the hat to be. If you grab string and line it around the edge of the observer, you can then put carpet on top of that, and you can make it look like the brim of a Scarecrow hat. This works great in any type of farming field, whether it's wheat, carrots, potatoes, beetroot. and it generally just adds to the atmosphere of it being a farm. Another thing you can have laying around the farm are wheelbarrows, and here are two designs for those. Using the dark oak wood fence gates in particular, you can make the wood color match this of the grindstone. The grindstone works extremely well as a wheel in most cases in this game. Now, I know it's not round, but it's just about as close as you're going to get with kind of the spool going down the center. And generally, a grindstone in real life is a wheel that spins, so it kind of already tricks your mind into thinking that that's what it is. Both designs vary in that one uses a cauldron for more of a metal design, and one uses a composter for a wooden design. But the good thing about the composter is you can actually fill it up using your seeds, and it makes it functional. Not necessarily what a wheelbarrow would be functional for, but it is still serves a function. So you can put this out near your fields so that you can recycle your 980 stacks of leftover wheat seeds that you get every single time you harvest one piece of wheat. Here's a cool design that I've used in my modern city build quite a few times now, but if you have a construction site themed base, or if you have just a house that's meant to be under construction, it's built like that and it's going to stay like that forever, a good sawmill design is putting the stone cutter with some stone slabs kind of leading out of it to make it look like this, kind of like the table that they push the wood across. Putting some birch slabs and some sand on the ground beside them makes it look like the birch slabs have been cut up and this is all the sawdust from it. So, using the brand new Nether blocks, I say brand new, I know they've been out for a while, but technically we still are in 1.16. It's not quite 1.17 yet, and that actually reminds me saying this. But when 1.17 comes out, a whole bunch of brand new moss blocks, vegetation are going to be added to go along with the lush caves biome. There is going to be so many more outdoor vegetation themed build tips that I'm going to be able to do. So if you want that, leave a like on this video and tell me in the comments below if you would like that. I'll make sure to make a video of that when those blocks come out as soon as possible. So moving on to these nether trees here. These can look really good in enchanted forest biomes. This one here is using the nether wart blocks, and this one here is using the warped wart. Mixing it along with the vines on the ground, a little bit of these nether sprouts, that's what they're called, and some mushrooms as well can really make for a magical environment. You don't have to make them this oak tree shape. I just did this just because it was the easiest. But you can make custom huge trees out of these. Have vines, dangling all down, or vines growing up to it. It can really add to the environment as well. Or if you want red kind of tree leaves to make it look like it's autumn, this can also work well. This is a great alternative to wool and concrete. So if you're making any type of paths, roads, or streets, you're going to need some street lanterns. Here are a couple designs for those. Depending if you want it rustic or modern, you can actually use either lanterns or sea lanterns to make it look, either old medieval kind of thing with it hanging from chains, or this big kind of LED lamp here. This lantern here is actually the one that I use in my city, minus a couple materials. These here would be stone bricks, and this would be the dark oak. But this actual rounded head here is the design that I use in my modern city building. Another great alternative if you have quite a bit of a wide path, you can make this either a street lamp that is double-headed, or you can put flower baskets on them. This is the best type of plant to put in them is this sweet berry bush. Because it goes all the way up to the top of the block in a bit of a solid manner, a couple pixels across, it makes the chain really blend down into the middle of the bush, rather than things like flowers, which have that huge gap in them, and it just looks really weird because you can tell that it's floating. For outdoor at the back of a house, or in a town, on a patio, there is multiple different patio blocks you can use. You can use fires for the kind of campfire, bonfire things. Making a whole bunch of benches. These you should know how to make. They're just some staircases with signs on the side. But the main star of this is these barbecue designs. So, I didn't originally come up with these, but I did add the idea to use some invisible item frames to add some food on the grill. So you can use dispensers with some trapdoors on the back kind of hanging over one block. Putting some rails on top of that kind of makes it look like the heated grill. Some iron trapdoors hanging off the sides of that. and it can really make it look like those little shelves that you put the plate on while you're grilling your food. Using some banners, some item frames with, again, some iron trap doors, can make it look like some handles to open up the barbecue, kind of service it, or if there's some shelves in there. Using looms also works really good, and this has its advantages, because if you're making a creative map, again, you need creative, you need to have access to item frames, the invisible kind. You can make it look like there's food on the grill. So putting on the invisible item frames and then putting the food inside of that can make it look like the food is on top of this grill design that comes with the top of the loom block. Then, of course, for the patio stones down here, I'm actually using these lodestones. The side design isn't the greatest, but the top is amazing for it. It has a really nice, cool, blue kind of stone-ishy texture, whereas this one here has a lot more yellow in it. You can also use, of course, the smooth stone or the polished andesite. All three of them work the same, it just depends on what kind of color you want. From here on out, we're going to be looking at mostly outdoor themed, kind of vegetation and nature themed building tips. So, first up we have logs, fallen logs. So, by putting some vines on fallen logs, it really makes it look like it's overgrown in a bit of a forest or a jungle area. Adding some fences sticking out can also make it look like there's some branches out of the log as well. If you wanted to make it look like the log was cut down by man, rather than nature knocking it over with lightning or wind, you can actually put an axe, again in a visible item frame. I'm going to give you guys the command on how to do that at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. I also did give it in the start of my 1.16 update overview video, as this is when it was added. Another great way to decorate some outdoor, more kind of war-themed or modern themes as well is barbed wire. You might need it for on top of your fences. This one here is generally a tarp-covered fence so you can't see in. Or if you wanted to cover some trenches going into no man's land. Using this dead brain coral is absolutely amazing. It works so well as barbed wire, and you generally wouldn't be able to tell the difference. If you were brand new to Minecraft and I was to show you this, you'd be like, whoa, there's barbed wire in this game? I never knew that. Oops. And then you'd look at it and it's like, whoa, it's dead coral? I never would have guessed, because it looks so good with these little pointy things sticking out, and generally just the way it's clumped up. If you run it along kind of large areas, it really brings it together. Sadly, one problem with using this dead brain coral as barbed wire is the fact that you can't actually put it on top of iron bars. I'm actually clicking my mouse really hard right now. Again, I can't do it. I can place it on any block. Actually, I can also place it not on these three. Cobwebs, the path blocks because it's not a full block, or leaves. So the three general suspects. I did test it. You can place it on top of glass and ice though. So those are options. Back into the more nature-themed builds, when you're decorating some outdoor spaces, you're going to need some big rocks. If it is natural, that is. If it's a field, say a soccer field, you're not going to need these. But if you're decorating more of a forest, a cliffside, any type of medieval build, you're going to want these. So using some stone stairs and stone slabs that were recently added, I believe, in 1.14 or 1.15, you can really make it look like there's some boulders that are maybe half in the ground and just sitting here. Mixing in some cobblestone also works for adding some texture to these as well. Some other ways to make some smaller rocks, again, like I showed you earlier, would be stone buttons on the ground for small pebbles, some stone slabs for maybe some bigger landscaping rocks. Cobblestone also works as well. And then two interesting ways that I've never actually seen done before to make kind of rocks or rock piles would be using this dead bubble coral and dead tube coral. They don't look the greatest in my opinion, but they do have that great feeling, and if you mix them into maybe a volcanic setting, they can also look like dead bushes, such as what I'm going to show you up here. Now moving on to the more medieval paths. So this here would be leading up to sort of a town square. You can put bushes across paths. Try to make sure the leaves are quite random. Don't just put a solid line of them like this, as it does tend to look too upkept and not really medieval. If it's modern, it works a lot better. But for medieval builds, try to keep them more unnatural, kind of overgrown a little bit. Add some grass in here, a little bit of lilies of the valley too. I love these flowers. They look amazing with the white. Really makes them pop out, gives it a little bit of color. For the path, I've used cobblestone, a mixture of dead tube coral and brain coral, and this basalt. I've done an interesting pattern here. You don't have to go this overboard, especially this isn't survival. A lot of these blocks might be a little bit hard to get with finding the basalt deltas and even a coral reef as well. In this little area here in the center, I have quite a few lantern designs. Depending on the theme that you want, you could either use some standard overworld looking materials with a lantern on top. This is for, of course, medieval lanterns. You could use some nether themed, so we have the dark crimson fence with the black stone bricks. Or if you want it more of a water themed, or maybe just a generally green themed base in general. Or again, of course, aquatic, aquariums, anything like that underwater. You can use the warped fence and the prismarine, and it gives it more of a blue kind of tint to it. One of the biggest thing I see people doing is when they make planter boxes is using things like oak trapdoors. Try to stay away from it because you can see the dirt through it, and it doesn't really look right. I always try to stick to the solid trapdoors such as dark oak and spruce. If you have a texture pack, that's a completely different story, but being able to not see the dirt through it is just a huge game changer. One thing I see people mistakenly doing is not using enough of these 4 blocks right here when they're making gardens. Using just some standard grass and tall grass can really bring depth to it, because instead of just having the textures on these kind of 3 geometrical planes, you can bring them on the angles as well, and it just can add a little bit more texture moving back and forth, just seeing it from the different angles. Ferns are also great as well because not very many people use them, and they can really break up the builds. I don't believe I've used any on this path here, but you'll see them later on throughout that town, and it really just adds a little bit more color because they're a little bit darker than the normal grass. Another really good plant design is using these dead bushes underneath some oak leaf blocks, and it can help it make it look like the stem of a plant with some branches sticking out, and it makes it really look like almost maybe a small tree or some type of bonsai bush. So I'm going to go over this last lava themed and kind of wasteland tip here before we get into custom trees. So this here is pretty huge. I see a lot of people making lava pits wrong. They just kind of dig a hole and then fill it with lava up to the surface height, and then they're done. Add stone around it. You notice in Minecraft they spawn with stone, and already it makes it look a little bit better. But mixing in, again, cobblestone, coarse dirt, basalt, slabs even, can really make it look a lot more broken down, I guess, more cluttered, a bit more rubbly. Adding the lava on different layers helps it look less robust and less kind of full. Another thing to make sure you add when there is lava nearby is magma blocks. These things look really good. It really helps it look like heated stone. And, I mean, it is hot, right? Campfires as well. I told you guys to use this particle effect way back with the chimney. And here it is again, underneath lava. It really helps to emphasize that, this block is warm. Here we have the particle effect floating up through it. And it can give off the steam, right? Lava is going to be bubbling. It's going to create a lot of smoke near it. Yeah, that's what you see in volcanoes, the big clouds of ash. Adding these campfires just below the lava, like there doesn't even need to be blocks above them. It can just be straight the lava, because the lava will not actually go down and break the campfire like it would, say, redstone or any type of other small block. These campfires act as a full block. So adding this particle effect can really help bring these lava pools together, along with dead bushes. This is dead fire coral. Adding it around can really help make it look like, it's charred. There's no life in this area. I just added these. These are basically going to go out of style in 1.17 anyway, because they're going to be adding these staglamites. But these are blackstone pillars and just kind of spikes just in general. Adding walls on top of solid blocks with really any type of block choice, whether you want it to be stone bricks, prismarine, sandstone, granite, andesite. It can really help bring staglamites into your caves if you want to do it with andesite. It works for overworld caves, or if you're going for spikes for more of a sinister kind of theme to your base, you can use these as well. Now we're getting into custom trees, and there's a lot of them that you can make. So this here we all are known and familiar with. This is the standard Minecraft oak tree, and it, no offense here, but it looks pretty shit. Like, it doesn't look good. We're all used to seeing it. And so making an oak tree like this can really help break up the build and draw a center of attention because it's a lot different from the rest. A couple tips here that I've used and I'm going to go over here is using these wood blocks rather than the logs having the face out. It can really help make it look more like branches, smaller branches too. If you're using this oak wood, you can use spruce wood fences to make it look like even smaller little bits of wood kind of branching out. Another big play in this is custom heads. I can't actually copy it, can I? I can. This is just a custom player head that has an oak log texture to it. I'm going to go over a little bit of a site here with you guys that I will show you that is actually really good for getting these player heads. So guys, I'm not actually going to show the site on camera, but this here is the link that I use, and you can search a huge database of player heads ranging from things like loaves of bread to signs with letters on them, even just to things like this, which are just some simple stumps. So if you go to https://Minecraft hyphen, I believe that's what that is, little dash, heads.com slash, I'm not sure what that end slash is, but put it in there. This will take you to, I believe it's the largest database of player heads. You can also search heads of actual players as well, so you could probably find my head on there. Not sure why you'd want it though. Moving on to some more custom trees, they don't have to always be 1 block thick for the trunk. Using things like fences and even sandstone walls can really help break it up a little bit, add some smaller trees into your building as well. Adding the leaves onto them in different shapes, not just always like the standard ball of an oak tree, can also add some depth and even some detail into your builds, having different breeds of trees in them. Or if you don't want any leaves at all, you can go with this dead tree design. It's basically this, start off with just a standard oak tree and just don't put leaves on it. It's that simple. Just chuck some of these spruce wood fences around in places where the leaves would be, and that kind of makes it look like more of the twigs kind of breaking off and kind of being visible like a dead tree would. Moving on to the 2 final trees here, we have a palm tree. There's 2 general designs here. I gravitate more towards this one looking a lot better. Palm trees tend to have quite a thin trunk compared to some trees, considering their height, and so you can really emphasize that using fences because they are a lot thinner. Adding jungle leaves, make sure to use different leaves. I was going to use birch leaves for this, but I forgot. Using different types of leaves can really also add to the detail of your trees. Adding in these palm trees note blocks. Don't use jukeboxes. They might be a little bit easier to get in circumstances. Maybe, actually no, jukeboxes are the one that require diamonds, so don't use jukeboxes, they're just bad overall, because they have the little slot in them. Using note blocks, they have a solid texture throughout the entire block, and it allows for, if you're on top, you don't see that slot in the top of the coconuts. That's what these are meant to look like. The second design for the palm tree would be using the composter as the trunk, because it has this really good palm tree-like texture. Again, I don't like it because the trunk is just too thick in my opinion. Adding on to the somewhat of a lava theme, or kind of wasteland, kind of dead area, using this basalt block laying on the side or straight up in pillars can really make it look like there's some charred trees, kind of like a wildfire went through here. This can be added around lava pools to really bring some atmosphere to the area. I'd really like this to be seen in standard Minecraft, but I know that they probably won't be adding this. Adding some coal blocks around some coal ore as well, along with some dead fire coral, can really add to the atmosphere, make it look like dead bushes, especially right beside some live berry bushes, and adding some spruce trees as well. So guys, that is practically it for all of the individual decor tips and tricks. So, just like every other video, I have a final area which shows a lot of these kind of put together, what they would look like, some of them mix-matched into one environment. So, I have made a medieval town square. So these houses I didn't actually show you how to build. If you would like a tutorial on how to build some medieval style houses, again, let me know down in the comments and I'll show you guys. So using the path, I've actually used the exact same path as I did over there. Over here, we got the stone buttons for a little bit of texture. We have this larger fence post with the lanterns on it in the center, the double head on it. Down the actual paths, we have some standard one-post lights. On the houses, again, I've really mixed in some of the coarse dirt, the podzol, these large ferns. I'm telling you guys, these things really bring it together, make it look really nice. Using the fence gates as an archway, they actually drop down when they hit the stone walls. I actually realize now that I forgot to show you over there. Oops. But you're showing them now. Using them as kind of make more of an arched fence design can really bring a little bit more depth to it. So again, using some flower pots, some hanging baskets off of the side of this house, add some color, a little pop of the red in there. Try to bring as many colors as you can into these builds. Here is a custom tree. I've actually made a huge one here. And this is what I'm showing you guys with the rocks that I said earlier, how there's going to be one more creative only. And that is using the invisible item frames, which I'm now going to show you how to get for decorating things like sticks and rocks on the ground in more of a nature area here. So guys, the command that you're going to want to use to get these sick item frames really useful is /give. You can either put in your name directly or @p. I'm just going to put in Tarsal66 here. And then from there, you're going to want to go Minecraft : item _ frame. Left curly bracket, capital E on entity, capital T on tag, colon, another left curly bracket, not the other one or else it won't work. You're opening two brackets here. And the entity tag is invisible 1b, lowercase b. And then you're going to end it out with, oh, sorry, I forgot a colon in between the 1 and the invisible. After this, you're going to go back and end it off with two brackets to close off the ones that you started. Give yourself what looks to be a normal item frame, but when you place it, you realize it's not a normal item frame. And inside this, you can put any item that you want, rotate it any orientation, and this works so good in most circumstances. So here you have some sticks laying on the ground. Firework stars look really good as pebbles. You can also put them on trees, things like this. You can put sticks inside the leaves. You can even put apples inside the leaves as well. That's also a really good idea. In this tree, I've put a beehive. I've also added these player heads, like I said. It really gives some depth, and it adds a little bit of these kind of stems sticking out, except they're smaller, and they're not just a general Minecraft block size. It can add a little bit more depth to it. This house here doesn't really have much in forms of tips and tricks. I'm still just going to show you guys just how, if you want to see how medieval houses are built, you can use it. Got the wool up in the attic kind of to represent that kind of white, like stucco kind of material. Hay on the roof. Got the flower pots all around, and then the freaking garden down here is looking amazing as usual. Got all the different types of leaves, grass, ferns mixed in there. And generally, this house actually turned out really good. I don't really typically build medieval. I'm more of a modern kind of person, but this looks really good as well. And here is one design tip that I didn't actually show you guys earlier. I just realized I forgot to put it in. But you can put item frames on top of barrels to make it look like an open barrel, and you can kind of see what's inside of there. So we have a little bit of a beetroot spillage. This one here has some type of vines or maybe some spinach or leafy greens in it. And then also for produce vendors, you can put foods and raw meats or even cooked meats on top of, actually, can you put cooked meats? I don't think you can. You can put most meats, fish as well, as long as it's raw, and potatoes, anything that you can cook on top of extinguished campfires, and it's never going to cook. So you can actually make it look like here, we have some fresh meats out for sale. We got an open vendor. This would be, for my design, built onto the back of another house. I didn't make this house just because I ended the plot here. It's not really needed. So, other than that, that basically wraps it up. As you can see, we got a whole bunch of the tips and tricks kind of mix-matched into this environment for a town. I was going to do more, maybe an outer door environment, maybe a campsite type thing like that. But maybe if I do a second video of outdoor tips and tricks, I will put it in that one. Just because this video is getting really long, and as you can tell, there was so much more to cover than all of these last videos, basically combined. So if you want more, I'm going to break it up into a second video. I'm going to do another tips and tricks video as soon as I can. The next video isn't going to be outdoor themed though. I have a lot of ideas for dungeon themed tips, so that is probably going to be the next one, is dungeon and medieval themed. That was a lot to cover. Hopefully you guys stuck with me here. I know my view time usually goes down after the first couple minutes because everybody's like, ew, he's a YouTube kid, get off this video, I'm gonna go watch Korean. But if you give us a chance, you realize that we have some pretty good things to say as well. Other than that, guys, I'm going to leave this video here. It's been a long one. If you did watch this far, comment Fortnite cringe in the comments. I don't know. Anyway, guys, if you like and subscribe to this video, it helps a lot. Get these videos on people's For You pages. Is that the term? No, that's TikTok. Recommended pages, the YouTube algorithm. Anyway, guys, subscribing, liking, small YouTubers always helps us out a bunch. Really appreciate it, guys. And until the next video, peace.